go. Season 5, episode 1.
Holy shit.
Right? I didn't think we were going to make it after the end of last season when everything just turned to chaos and we couldn't record ever and all that horribleness happened. But we did it. We're back for season 5.
Only 2 weeks late. End of January, but we did it. We're here. And I even have a second shitty book that we're going to be reading starting tomorrow. Hi, everyone. This is Matt of Your Book is YBiWDD Drinks, sort of the Two Pens writing blog at twopens.wordpress.com.
And this is Tyler of Your Book is YBiWDD Drinks. That's pretty much it.
Unfortunately, because you moved, you don't get to do Jacks
anymore. I'm supposed to be starting a new gaming podcast, but I have not had the extra attention to devote to that at all. But hopefully in the next few months I'll be able to get that going and we'll have more shit to talk about.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We'll have a podcast where we don't punish ourselves for a month to get it done.
We can talk about fun shit.
We're still gonna drink though.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking Drake's Folly. Roger, it's a Drake's Jolly Roger Imperial Coffee Porter. It's from this particular bottle was from sometime last year, and it's very tasty. I'm enjoying it.
Does it actually taste like coffee?
You can taste it very faintly. In that same way that like a chocolate porter, you can kind of taste the hints of chocolate, but it's not like you're drinking like someone took an espresso and mixed it with a stout. Like just pour the two into one cup and you're drinking the horrible results thereof. It's good. I like it.
I've had one beer that actually tasted like a coffee and I enjoyed it, and I fucking hate coffee. And that was Bootlegger Brewery's Black Phoenix.
Okay.
Which is coffee and chipotle.
Interesting.
So it's got the coffee flavor, and then it's got this smoky, spicy flavor to it that was really good with the giant ass burger I was eating at the Boneyard down in Studio City like 2 years ago.
Nice. Yeah, this is very, very faint coffee, so it's tasty. I like it. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking something that tastes like exactly what it says on the label. I'm drinking a Coney Island Brewing Company's Hard Orange Cream Ale.
Okay.
I was at Bevmo a couple weeks ago, and I saw this new about a year ago, I was introduced by C.A. Dave from Happy Jacks to Not Your Father's Root Beer.
Yes.
Which is a hard root beer and is delicious. It is so good. Since then, I've tried a couple others. I had the Mission Street, I think it's called Mission Street Brewery, which is really dry and tastes more like a beer, but it's also like 9% or something like that.
That's not bad.
I see a new one at Bevmo, and it's called like the best damn hard root beer you've ever had. And I was like, well, that's a bold claim. I have to find out. And I get it, and the guy at the register is like, I haven't tried this one, but if you really like the root beer flavor, get the Coney Island flavor kind. He's like, that's the one that tastes the most like root beer. It's not like a crazy high alcohol volume. So I brought the best damn root beer. It was not. It was actually the worst of them that I've ever had. So way to fuck up that naming thing. But then I went and got the Coney Island, and they also had the orange hard cream ale. I recommend it above all of them. Like if you want a hard root beer or hard orange soda, get the Coney Island. I guess Henry Weinhard's is doing one now too, with a root beer and a cream soda, an orange cream soda.
Alcoholic?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
actually saw it at the Bevmo by your house.
I love Weinhard's just non-alcoholic soda root beer. I mean, that's awesome.
I guess they're doing one now. They have the ones I saw there were the hard orange cream soda that they make, and I think hard ginger ale. Maybe places doing hard ginger ales now.
I'll have to check that out this weekend then, because I get paid on Friday and may have to go try some experimental booze. All right, so Season 5, Episode 1. Our book for January 2016 was Vampyrrhic.
But it's spelled funny. It's not just vampiric like of vampires. It's vampiric like Pyrrhic victory.
Yes. It's immediately, whenever there is any kind of a play on words or like a pun like that in a title, I'm automatically skeptical.
Right, because the author is like, oh, look at me, I'm so clever. When
Yeah.
really, they're probably not.
So, Tyler, you're going to need to fill in some gaps because this book just kind of, I got numb after a while because not a lot. This book seemed to be a fair amount of content, but no substance, right? Like it didn't feel weighty at all.
Nothing happens until about 85% of the way through the book, and then it all happens, and it's very brief, and it's like, oh, that was what we read this shit for?
Yeah. So, basically, there is a town in England, in northern England, called Leppington, and it's on, in like many English towns, it is named after the river Leppington that flows nearby. And really, Leppington's only main claim to fame is that it produces children that want to leave the town and go to places more exciting, and a giant slaughterhouse, the proprietors of which were also named Leppington, and basically they were one of the main producers of canned meats during World War I and II. And they basically got a royal contract to supply the English army with canned meat. But basically the slaughterhouses have been there forever, and that's the main source of industry for the town. Anyway, this book, Vampyrrhic, focuses on 4 characters. There is David Leppington, the long-absent heir to the Leppington name, whose grandfather was the last owner of the slaughterhouses, having sold it to is it his great uncle? Yes, great uncle, because it's his father is his.
No, they sold it to somebody, some outside person.
No. I'm just trying to think of who the character, if his relation to the last owner. It's not grandfather.
No, it's the last owner was his
great uncle.
No, I can't remember. That's
okay,
anyway. It doesn't matter at all to the story.
Yeah. Anyway, so his father, David's father, left the town, and took his son with him, and now his son's all grown up and is a doctor. And so it's David Leppington. There's Bernice, a woman who works for basically a leech farm. She works for a place that grows medicinal grade leeches to be used in medical procedures. And she works there, and she lives in Leppington at the Leppington Hotel, because it's kind of like it's one part apartment building, one part actual hotel, because I can't imagine someone being able to afford living at the hotel.
Right. It's basically like furnished apartments.
Yeah,
is what they're selling, but no kitchen. So basically, this chick Bernice just stays in a hotel, lives in a hotel room. Which what?
So, but yeah, that's what happens. And then there is Electra, who is the proprietress of the hotel, and then there is Jack Black, who is a heavily tattooed and scarred criminal, who
can read minds.
Who is he's a yob in the English vernacular, just total street scum, boosting, breaking the houses, mugging people, everything else, and
I'm pretty sure killing vampires violates the terms of his ASBO.
And he's just and basically the whole book about this is that is the town Leppington, and apparently there are vampires. living beneath the town of Leppington. And we are introduced to the town of Leppington in fits and starts. Each chapter kind of jumps around from character to character. For instance, we get David coming into town and his interactions, and he kind of runs into Jack Black as they're both on the same train into town, because for some reason, unexplained, Jack Black is drawn into Leppington.
He thought the name was funny.
Yeah, and then we jump to Bernice, and Bernice, in addition,
starts with Bernice.
Yeah, in addition to all of the mundane things she does, Bernice has a fascination or obsession. Basically, she was given free reign by Elektra to go through the Dead Room, which is basically the room where Elektra and all of her family members, because her family has run the hotel for many generations, have basically taken items left behind by people and stashed them basically in this room for safekeeping. Because as is explained, people will just check in, and then rather than pay their bill, they'll just either up and leave all their shit behind and vanish off into the night. Or several times there have been suicides at the hotel. And there have also been mysterious goings-on. And so Bernice, while going through the Dead Room, found this one guy's suitcase. And he had been an American who had come over and basically had been touring England, basically checking out haunted locations in that, typical ghost chaser sort of, low budget way. Only he was staying at the hotel in Leppington in Bernice's own room. Woo. When something happened to him. Basically, he had this sensation while wandering around the hotel that he was being followed, and he kept seeing this thing darting in and out of view, just of course, always on the edges of his vision. When he finally saw it, and he had this sensation while he had run back to his room to get the camcorder, and he had the sensation while he was in his room that something was lurking outside, that was pacing the hallway. And in his naive sense, he was going to throw open the door and look and finally get a recording of a ghost. Only the tape doesn't show it. It's kind of like if you were to basically it's like found footage.
The camera falls over and it's like some Blair Witch shit.
And he gets dragged basically down, like through the hotel. Like somebody basically picks up he gets like grabbed and yanked out of the shot and into the hallway. And then someone unknown picks up the camera and starts basically racing through the hotel, down into the basement, through a big door, down into the darkness, where we see this gentleman basically getting hurt in some way. Like someone grabs his arm and begins twisting it like they're going to break it off or anything, and essentially implies that he dies horribly by violence, but you never really see it. And then the camera races back up to the room, and that's where it's left. The tape is left in the camcorder in the room, and Bernice found it. And so Bernice has been basically watching the tape every night to fall asleep, because apparently that's watching creepy videos like that makes it so that you have to watch them, and then you can't sleep until you watch them. And she's having the same sensation that somebody is prowling the hallway outside, and so every night she barricades the door so they can't get in and everything else. Of course, okay. Elektra.
So that right there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt you. That right there literally happens in the first. I don't even think it's the first chapter. I think that's the prologue. That happens. That is the most interesting thing to happen in the entire book.
Yep.
Nothing else we talk about for the rest of the synopsis of this book will get that much detail, because it's all stupid.
Yeah, and so each
They
time we jump
front-loaded all the
to
quality in this book.
every time we jump to a different character, we just get another snippet of things. Like we're introduced to random throwaway people who meet their demise by vampire, and like we meet a woman who's coming home from having had sex with her lover and ends up meeting a vampire and gets bit on the neck and turned into a vampire, and just all of these people who are eventually getting
No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I'll explain that in a little bit. It doesn't happen that way. It happens so much more horrifically and poorly than that. That is like that scene is when I was like, what the fuck?
So anyway, Jack Black comes into town and
tries to start a fight on the train with an old dude.
Yeah, and then David manages to kind of diffuse the situation, and they kind of split up and part ways. And then Jack Black goes and finds like 4 tweakers and beats the shit out of them and turns them into a gang.
Right.
And there's
I'm gonna beat you up. You're my gang now.
And then there's like one scene where they're actually breaking into somebody's house and taking shit. And then David goes and basically checks himself into the hotel. And he's come to Leppington because he wants to reconnect with, I guess, his uncle. And the town doctor is basically retiring, and his uncle has written to him basically saying, why don't you come visit the old family home, and maybe why don't you check out the town? Maybe you'd like to stay on as the doctor and get your own practice here rather than working for basically the NHS in London. So he comes out and he meets Bernice and Electra. He meets Electra first, and she kind of introduces.
Did we talk about Electra?
Yeah, we mentioned that Electra was the owner of the hotel.
She was a TV news personality who came back when her mom got sick and had planned on going home, and then her dad got sick, and then they're like, oh, you own the hotel now, and then she never left.
Yeah. And she is weird. She's like, the impression I got off of her is that she's basically like a goth who never fully like grew out of it. Like she's always dressing in like, at one point she's like dressed in like black leather pants, and
they talk about her hair a lot, like her blue-black hair.
Yes.
Like her hair is so black it's almost blue, and like they won't shut the fuck up about her. Dude won't shut the fuck up about her hair.
So
that makes me think that he got dumped by a chick that looked like that.
So they are they're there basically. And
it took to get to everyone in the hotel, because then they're at the hotel and Jack Black wanders into the hotel and Electra just goes, hey, you want a job?
Well, hold on. That's not entirely it. Basically, David goes up to see his uncle, right?
Jack Black gets to the hotel first, though.
He does, because they're having. Yeah. I thought that the scene with them and Jack. Oh no, maybe you're right.
No,
so like basically,
Jack Black comes to the hotel.
Yeah,
Electra gives him a job.
Yeah,
everybody's like, why'd you do that? He's a thug. And she's like, whatever. I like him.
Well, basically, it should be noted that
But that's half of the book right there. Literally, 50% of the book is just getting the 4 main characters to a single location.
It should be also noted that the hotel in the basement where they keep all the supplies for the hotel, it's apparently spooky as fuck. No one likes to go down there, in part because there's a giant iron door down there that is kept padlocked. It's just spooky as hell.
And nobody knows where it goes.
And nobody ever opens it because everyone's scared of it. And the only way Electra can get basically like this one dude who helps her like load stuff in and out to go down there is to get him drunk.
She's got to give him. She's like, you can have free drinks if you go down in the basement and like change the kegs or whatever the fuck ever he's got to do.
Yeah, and so he doesn't show up to work because he's probably sleeping off a hangover, and
we never hear from that dude again.
Yeah, and they're hanging out and they're having dinner or something, and Jack Black just shows up at the back door. He's like, I want a job. And do you have any work? Because, he's a criminal. And
right,
he's looking for a legit job.
Back door of a kitchen and be like, oh, you got any work? and fucking
Electra's like,
hotel proprietresses give you fucking jobs.
Yeah, she's like, sure, you're kind of hot in a street thug-esque tattooed, possibly going to steal all the silver the moment I'm not looking at you way. Sure, you can totally do that. You got to go down in the creepy basement. He's like, whatever. So
that was his interview. Will you go down in the creepy basement? Yes, you're hired.
You're hired. Go do it. And everyone's like looking at her like she's weird, but she's like, whatever. I got a good intuition about the guy. And so the next day, David goes up to go see his uncle, who apparently is a blacksmith, also, in addition to having formerly owned and run a giant slaughterhouse. And he tells David basically about the family history. And the family history consists of when they were the family originally came from Germany, and apparently the forefather of the family was a German, like I think he said he was a German Viking.
Yeah,
a German Viking who was a blacksmith who apparently one day was working in his blacksmith shop, and who should come visit but Thor, and the god of thunder. And Thor basically goes, my hammer broke, I need a new, and they're talking, and he goes, my hammer broke, and Leppington's ancestor goes, well, I can make you a better hammer out of iron. And so he forges basically Mjolnir.
Yeah.
And Thor goes, this is a pretty sweet hammer. And thanks for that. I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to bang your wife because you can't have kids. So I'm going to bang your wife and give you a child so that your family line will continue. And also, because I'm going to bang your wife, your child is going to have a divine prophecy. And basically, the divine prophecy was that that Thor and the gods were going to take basically the Ironheart, the dead warriors collected from Valhalla, from the fields of battle all over the world, collected by the Valkyrie, and they were going to give Leppington basically this army. And the army was going to be located in a cave on an island, and that he had to go there, and basically he was going to go and establish a town and use this army to basically overthrow Christendom, because Christianity was marching across the world and supplanting all of the old religions and weakening the gods. And that they wanted Leppington's ancestor to use this army of dead men, because they would be unstoppable, to kill basically Christians and to bring about a new empire ruled by Leppington and defended and fought, by this army of dead men, to continue the worship of the old gods. And basically, they had a magic sword, and they get to England. And they find the river Leppington, and they found Leppingsvault, or whatever.
Leppingsvault, which is the original family name.
Yeah, and he finds the army of dead men. And when basically he's there in the Leppington, and he's got his human followers and his human army there, and one night he and basically his chief lieutenant get into a fight, and they start fighting and fighting and fighting. And as they're fighting, basically this storm that's raging outside blows open the doors and blows out all of the lights, basically. So it snuffs out all the torches, kills the fire. And as Leppington and his lieutenant, this giant Gaul, warrior, are fighting, they end up killing Leppington's ancestor's wife and basically the betrothed of the Gaul warrior.
It was Leppingsvalt's bride to be and his sister.
Sister, okay. And wasn't she pledged to the warrior?
Let's say yes, because that's more interesting than whatever was in this shit book.
All right. Anyway.
It might be. I don't remember.
And so when they find out what had happened, of course, because they were so evenly matched, they couldn't kill each other. Leppington was pissed, and he blamed Thor for the deaths of his betrothed and his sister, and because the storm was the one that blew out the lights. And so rather than lead this army of dead men, he basically instead built a church, turned his back on it. And Thor came down and was like, "What the fuck are you doing? You have the divine commandment." And Leppington's like, "Fuck you, I do what I want." And Thor goes, "All right, fine, fuck you," and smashes him in the face with Mjolnir and disfigures him, and then bails. And so he slowly wastes away, and then eventually, as he's almost dead, and apparently at some point he remarried and had another kid, or he had a kid, and Thor comes back and it's like, "So just so you know, you fucked up, and eventually your family is going to basically waste away to pretty much nothing, and your town will waste away to nothing. But we'll give you one last chance that the final, when everything seems like it is beyond hope, the last heir of the Leppington name will return to your home and complete the job that you fucked up and lead the army of the dead out into the world and to bring about the old god's return." And this is the story that David's uncle tells him, basically, as they're working. And they're drinking whiskey, and he had been working on this sword and everything, because it was supposed to be a replica of the magic sword that his family lost. And David's like, "Haha, that's funny. Wow, you're old and insane." And no, it turns out that David basically repressed all the memories of the vampires, and that he actually did see them. And his uncle, when he had been a child living in the town, his uncle had kind of tried to start grooming him to be the heir that would complete the divine task. But David's mother took him away, basically convinced his father to leave
his
town.
Mother, who wasn't a Leppington, she was an outsider, so his uncle didn't trust her to begin with. It's like, fuck this, we're moving to London. See ya.
And it's implied that she knew about things
I don't think she knew. I think she knew the uncle was fucking crazy.
Well, the thing is that she, at one point, on his way to his uncle's house.
Right. The first memory he gets back.
David remembers that basically he looked down into this grate because a toy had fallen near it. And as he's looking down into the grate, he remembered a flood of white soccer balls, basically, moving beneath the grate. And at least in his mind, at that point when he's getting this memory back, they are soccer balls. In fact, they are human heads. And at one point, he later on remembers that one of the faces looked up at him. But David's mom sees what he's doing and runs over and grabs his hand and drags him away. So to me, I kind of think that she knew what was going on. or at least knew what his uncle was trying to tell him. But that basically, she's like, fuck this. This is insane. We're getting the fuck out of here. So anyway, David's uncle takes him up onto the property to basically this tunnel, this cave that's part of the property that runs into the hill and down into the ground. That's been sealed shut by these thick iron bars. And it's implied that David, in like his last times in the town before he left as a child, his uncle brought him there and basically called the vampires up so that David could see portions of the army. And David goes back basically, and he's having like dinner with Electra and Bernice, and he's telling them this story, and Jack is wandering around. And at this point we start getting actually the signs that Jack is psychic, because he's able to read people's minds. And it's weird because it's not like right from the get-go that you know he's psychic. It's like the author introduced it a quarter of the way into the book that he's suddenly able to read minds, like basically once he gets there. And it's at this point that more people are getting taken by vampires. So Tyler, why don't you tell the horrible one of the woman who is on her way home from freshly being shagged.
She's not on her way home. She's on her way to go find Jack Black to bang him, because she's seen him, and I guess she's gonna do it. So she runs into this other guy who is this tall, long-haired, blonde, American accent having dude who seduces her and then takes her someplace, and then basically he takes her to a graded entrance to the sewers, like those big, like fucking Harrison Ford's gonna jump out of it after Tommy Lee Jones says he doesn't believe that the one-armed man killed his wife, kind of thing, like that kind of entrance where there's a big grate across it, and the vampires come out of the sewers and start grabbing like her body parts and pulling them into the thing and drinking her blood.
Oh yeah, like they grab like her breasts and like stretch them out,
and it's like this horribly graphic scene, and it's like, ugh, okay, that was like really unnecessary for the tone that the book had so far. And then there's a few other scenes with people getting taken by the vampires. Some dudes are heading home after a poker game, and some guy sees her, now all hot and trashy, and she's like, hey, I got something to show you. You want to come see it? And he's like, yes, I do. So he goes with her, and then he's a vampire, and then he goes home to his wife, and she's all angry at him for being drunk and out at all hours, and he's like, hey, I got something to show you. And then she's, she never shows up. Like, that's the last time we see either of them.
And then, like, we're introduced early on to basically the guy at the slaughterhouse who, like, basically takes, like, defibrillator paddles and, like, puts them on either side he puts them on either side of, like, a pig's head and then, like, zaps it. And he's married, or he's involved with a woman who he just can't stand anymore, and he's going to go try and find and basically he's gay, right? But he's in denial about the fact that he's gay. Right. But he's going to go pull he's going to go find some dude in, like, a parking lot bathroom, basically.
That's right. It's I think they call it cottaging.
Yeah, and he goes, and he's in basically a bathroom stall, and he's waiting in there because that's where the gay men like to go to hook up, is in the bathroom. And he is in there, and the light turns out, and he hears someone walking around, and he's like, okay, well, this is another gay guy coming to do a gay hookup in the dark in this bathroom. So he whips his dick out, and he's waiting to get blown, and like he
gets turned into a vampire via blowjob.
Well, not really, because he's down there. This person that you don't see is down there, and basically chomps half of his dick off, and then proceeds to drain him from the stump. And
so half a blowjob.
Yeah, half a blowjob. So you're getting snippets of these scenes where people are getting taken by these vampires,
and they're all interspersed with this just absolute boring bullshit of David Leppington and Bernice and Elektra and Jack Black just dicking about in the hotel.
Yeah,
until finally there's this scene where this couple checks into the hotel, and it's clear that everyone's like, oh, they must be newlyweds, and it turns out it's a couple having an affair, and then like they go into the bathroom of their hotel room, and then somebody knocks on the door.
No, they've been basically fucking nonstop, and she gets up to use the restroom, and she hears a knock.
No, they were at the door. In the bath.
Oh, they were in the bath? And well, anyway, there's a knock, and she stays in the bathroom. He gets up to go check. And while she's in the bathroom with the door closed, he gets attacked.
Right.
And she is basically watching from underneath the crack at the bottom of the door. And she sees basically like his body like fall to the ground, and like he's getting like tossed around, and
he's like begging her to open the door, and she's like, what can I do? They're just gonna get me too.
And so like she manages to like, and everybody else is downstairs having dinner while this is happening, and Jack is working, and while they are basically having dinner, and David is filling them in on the story of his family that his crazy uncle has told them, the door like bursts open from the wind, and the wind blows these like red like pieces of paper all over the dining area where they're eating, and it looks like drops of blood being held in the air. And Bernice has this premonition that they've been there before, and the four of them have been there before, and that they were connected in some way, and i.e. that basically they're repeating the past, that Bernice is the betrothed.
No, they hadn't gotten to that point yet.
Well, yeah, but because eventually they get figured out.
Up in their rooms. They're up in their rooms, and David's like, I'm going to go talk to her. And he opens the door and sees Jack Black standing in the hallway. And he's like, you're a thug. You're just waiting to break into you're waiting to like rob people. And then Bernice opens her door and sees him. And then he's like, we need to go call Elektra or the cops because he's here, and we need like, they're all still looking at Jack Black like he's this criminal thug. And then they go and open.
Jack's like, you need to get the fuck back in your rooms and lock the fucking
He's like,
doors.
go to your fucking rooms because something bad is about to happen. And then Bernice goes and opens up the elevator, and the woman from the room down below
she managed to get out of the room.
Somehow managed to get out of the room, busts out, and she's like, you got to help me. They killed him. And then Jack Black is like, see, I fucking told you. So they go and like they get her, they put a robe on her because she's naked and covered in blood. And they're like, we have to get her to the hospital. And they all go to get into the elevator, and the doors close before David can get in the elevator. So Jack Black, who is carrying this woman, and Bernice, Jack Black, the woman, and Bernice are all in the elevator, and it goes all the way to the basement. And as before the doors open, Jack pushes Bernice like up against the wall so she can't like with her face in the corner. she hears something outside and basically feels Jack Black throw this woman out of the elevator. And then he pushes the door. The door closes. They go up to the first floor, and he like jams a table into the
doors, so it can't close.
The doors, so it can't close and go anywhere else. But while David was standing up on the fourth floor, the third floor, whatever floor their rooms were on, he's hearing people coming up the stairs, and the woman is screaming that those are the people that attacked her. But as the elevator goes down, like he hears their footsteps start going down the stairs. So he's like, okay, I'm safe now. He goes down, finds everybody on the first floor losing their shit. He's like, we got to call the cops because this dude just attacked people, because they were saying that he attacked the woman, even though he'd been with them the whole time.
And
it doesn't matter. They're just all prejudiced against him because he's got tattoos and a scar.
And basically, at that point, then Electra shows up and goes, "Did it happen again?" And everybody goes, "Oh!"
And then she plays it off like, oh, they were just having some kinky rough sex, and he took off, and she wanted out, and she starts like making all these excuses for why they aren't going to call the cops, and everybody just accepts that. Like they're like, oh, I don't like that, but I guess you're the boss. And then Bernice has the vision of like the feeling that they'd all been together before, and like they start to accept that, and then I can't remember where it goes from there. Then they get a call that then they get the call that David's uncle is in the hospital. So they go to the hospital.
Yeah, well, David
having accepted already that the woman that Jack Black threw into the basement is gone, because I guess they go look in the basement and nothing's there. So they get the call to go to the hospital, and Bernice and David go to the hospital where his uncle is, and they make it sound like he's been attacked. And then they talk to him, and he's like, "No, I blew up the gate, keeping the things in the sewer in the like underground. So guess what? You've got to take control of your vampire army, David, and lead them to destroy Christianity, or the world is fucked."
And basically that's where we get the name Vampyrrhic, because it's a Pyrrhic victory, because the gods are like, well, either you're going to you're going to destroy the world with your vampire army and we get to come back, or
our vampire army is going to destroy the world
anyway, and you'll all die, in which case we'll still die, but we'll have the satisfaction of taking you with us. And
so
also during this time, though, you while that is going on, they find strange goings on at the hotel. The door to the in the basement was open, and so they close it.
Right. And
then also someone had moved the table from the lift, and something was in the lift, but Elektra managed to basically turn off the power.
She trapped the elevator between floors.
Yeah, and so that during the day when David comes back,
surprise, they open it up, slut vampire.
They find the slut vampire in there.
And she's basically catatonic because it's daytime or some shit like that.
Yeah, and
so they move her into a little storage room in the basement, and then David comes back, and they're like, "We've got something to show you." It's like he just has to accept, okay, here this is, and then he goes.
They chain her down to a table.
They chain her down. He goes back to his uncle's place, and
finds a book.
Takes it back. When the book is like the history of his uncle gave him the book, but he goes back and gives it to Elektra, who's like knows all about Leppington and shit, and she reads that. And then he goes, I can't remember the timeline of it, but Elektra goes to a nearby town with the book to get some information on it, where it was printed, and finds out that it was a relatively new book. But he only printed like 2 copies of it for the dude's uncle, but he wanted it to look old And the only reason Electra knew is because the company had limited on the printing plate, so like she knew it was new because it wasn't a limited corporation until a certain point. And like the guy's like, oh yeah, legally we had to put that. But yeah, that's a new book. We changed a few things in it, and they're like, oh, that's weird. So they get back, and it turns out the vampire who's been turning all these people is Mike Stroud, this guy from the video at the start of the book that Bernice had been watching. They basically, the change in the book had been there was no way to kill the vampires. So basically, the uncle made it seem like the vampires were immortal.
And when the original printing of the book had stories of basically like this warrior priest who had fought a vampire and beheaded it and buried the head on one side of the river and the body on the other, and that seemed to kill it. And so basically he removed all references to the fact that the vampires could be stopped. He also really amped up the
prophecy part.
Like
you have to leave the army.
He added the prophecy basically about the final Leppington because he really wanted to make he was obsessed with this divine task, and so he wanted to try and like trick David into doing it. And Stroud, like for some reason, Stroud bought it. And while all of this is going on, they're basically holed up in the hotel like it's Night of the Living Dead. But the vampires, for some reason, don't just attack. Like they're out in the town making new vampires.
And Stroud tells them, we're going to leave you alive because we need you to be mortal because you can function in the daylight, and we need that, which, okay, whatever. And then they go back, and Electra says, hey, turns out you can kill them. Here's how. So they go down into the basement where they've got the slut vampire in the storeroom. They
cut her head off.
But he's got a fucking sword, right? And how does he cut her head off? He uses progressively larger knives from the kitchen. Like he starts with a paring knife and works his way up to like a cleaver to cut her head off. And then he gets to the spine. And he's like, oh, I better use a hacksaw. Get a fucking axe, dude. Come on.
And basically it's a very long, drawn out, like
it's a long ass unnecessary scene.
Yeah. And so Bernice at one point ends up getting like mind controlled and gets
the vampires can like psychically control you, or not control you, but they can like strongly suggest you do things. And she opens the doors in the basement, and which, I mean, fuck this. This door is like the least secure thing. Vampires have been sneaking down and letting. One of them came down during the night and like sawed the locks off, so they like pinned it shut. And then Bernice gets tricked, and she goes and opens it, and she gets kidnapped basically so there's like two kinds of vampires. They're the ones that are up on the surface, and then there's the ones that are down in the sewers. And the ones down in the sewers are like the Nosferatu type, bald heads, long fingers vampires, and the ones on top are these like shitty Eurotrash like Twilight vampires or something. And the people, the vampires up top have been killing people and either drinking their blood or taking them down to feed to the vampires down below.
Because the vampires down below have basically been kept.
They being kept sated by
the blood from the slaughterhouse.
Right. The blood from the slaughterhouse runs down into the sewer, but it like. So Bernice is down in the sewers, and she like grabs a chain and like gets away from the vampires carrying her.
Because they're mostly mindless. They're
like animals.
They're basically. They're drones that basically another intelligence has to basically give instructions to.
Right.
And so like if you, for instance, like if you gave like a computer an instruction of go open the window, it would try to open the window without going to the window and opening it, right? Like it doesn't know
Sort
to
of.
process. So they're like, so basically the drones are like, we're told.
But nobody knows that yet.
Yeah, the drones are told to bring her down there, and so she just grabs a chain, and eventually the drones keep walking. And
why can't we go? She gets away, and then they realize, oh shit, she's gone. We gotta go get her back. They chase after her for a while. She runs into.
Basically, at one point, we're introduced to this one kid who I believe has Down syndrome.
Well, they call him a mongoloid several times.
Yeah, and it's implied that he is not.
Come on, it's fucking 2016. I think we can come up with a better word than mongoloid.
Yeah, he's not neurotypical, and he gets kidnapped by the Eurotrash vampires, and they're basically like, "You're gonna make a great snack for our friends down below." Except the ones down below are like, "Your blood is wrong. We won't.
Your blood is bad." So Bernice runs into him,
and he's like,
"I'm gonna save you." And like it's like they're venturing together through the sewers, and they come to this point, and Bernice is like, I smell something coppery. And I'm sorry, if you know for a fact you're dealing with vampires and you smell something coppery, it should not take you more than a sentence to go, I smell blood. But no, for a paragraph, they describe the coppery smell in the air as she tries to figure out what it is because she's a moron.
Well, especially because she works at a place that grows creatures that feed on blood in a town known for a slaughterhouse. So like, it's in the middle of downtown, for fuck's sake.
So I guess the day has come, and it's like everyone in the town is going about their business because they have no idea what's happening with the vampires and everything. And apparently nobody reports anybody missing in this town ever. So day-to-day operations are going at the slaughterhouse, and all the blood is coming down, and like the vampires come to feed. And the guy, whose name I can't remember, the Down syndrome guy, drags Bernice away, and she realizes that the vampires there don't want anything to do with her. All they care about is
the blood.
She's like, they're like animals at a watering hole. And she realizes, that's the point when she realizes something has to be controlling them, because otherwise they would have been after us instead of going for that blood. David gets back to the hotel and realizes, they're like, oh shit, Bernice is gone. This is after he's gone to get the sword and everything and like sharpened it and stuff.
And there's that whole scene where basically he's sharpening it, and he tests the edge and he cuts himself, and the blood gets absorbed into the blade.
Right. So the blade has been blooded, which whatever the fuck ever. So he goes and he goes back, and then they're like, oh shit, Bernice is gone. He's like, well, we've got to go save her. Oh no, sorry, they bought a bunch of chainsaws. And
only two chainsaws for the men.
They had a bunch. They had a bunch of chainsaws set up, and they're like, all right, we're gonna lure them into the basement of the hotel one at a time, and then we're gonna cut their heads off. And then they're like, oh shit, they got Bernice. We have to go into the sewers. So they only take 2 chainsaws.
And
because Electra has this million candle power flashlight thing. And they're down, and there's this whole scene of them just traipsing through the sewers, shooting the light at things and chopping them up with chainsaws. And I'm not a doctor, and I have never actually seen somebody lose a limb to a chainsaw, but it does not happen anywhere near the way they describe it in the books.
And it also,
a chainsaw is not a melee weapon.
And also, I'm pretty sure it doesn't happen as fast.
Exactly.
Right? Like
it's not like sliding a blade through something. It's got to take its time to chew through all the material.
Like when you think about it, think like the closest analog to this I have is Army of Darkness, right?
Sure.
And Ash is like, holds it against it, is like pushing and forcing the chainsaw through the deadites and everything. It's not like he just goes whing and the heads and limbs fly away with the chainsaw. He's got to put some effort into it.
We just cited Army of Darkness for its realism compared to this book.
That's how bad this book is.
That's how bad this book is. So they're all in the sewers, and then David's chainsaw dies, so he throws it away. But Jack Black still got his, and they're fucking people up.
And David's got the sword.
And David's got his sword now, and he's like they're chopping up vampires. And this is like seriously, this is the last 10% of the book. From Bernice getting taken it's the last 10% of the book, and they get down there, and then Stroud shows up. He shows up with Bernice caught, and he's like, drop your sword in the chainsaw or I'll kill her. And they do, and he's like, well, I was going to kill her anyway. And then they take the light from Elektra, and then David's like, we have to get out of here. Let's run. Everybody grab hands.
And a vampire grabs Elektra's hand.
A vampire grabs
her.
It tricks her, and they're running, and then Jack Black jumps out of nowhere and saves her. And Stroud basically explains that he's controlling the vampires and that they normally wouldn't have cared about humans, but he's been putting images in their heads of them, of them, being the best meal for these vampires.
And also that he is getting his power from elsewhere.
Well, he doesn't explain that. Jack Black reveals that by saying that there's this black lightning, but it's not coming from Stroud. So they realize Stroud's getting his power from somewhere else, and I guess they all realize that it's coming from David's uncle, who was so obsessed with this idea of this vampire army that he basically manifested the power to control them, and the Stroud basically hijacked that power, and I forget who kills him. I don't even remember now how. So
basically,
Elektra gets out of the sewer somehow.
So what ends up happening is that they all scatter, right. And David and Bernice and the Down syndrome kid run in one direction, and Elektra and Jack Black run in the other. And Jack Black and Elektra basically battle their way to the culvert where the slut vampire got killed, and he basically kicks a hole in the grate, and it basically pushes Elektra out. And while she's on the other side, the vampires come up and he basically
Stroud pulls the grate shut so she can get away, and he's gonna protect her. He's gonna give his life to save her.
And she watches as basically he gets his throat bit now, and then he gets taken down, and the vampires swarm him, and then she goes to the hospital
to kill David's uncle.
And she kills him basically by asphyxiating him.
She puts a plastic bag over his head. And then there's this long drawn out scene where she's like, oh, his nose is bleeding. That's a common sign of asphyxiation, because this woman who was on the TV and then a hotel proprietor understands the signs of asphyxiation. So maybe she fucking saw it on House or something.
So she takes a tampon, cuts it up, and then shoves it up his nose to basically clot the blood. And then she does the same thing with his chest, and to make sure
she puts him down his throat, so he won't aspirate blood or something, to make it so they'll just rule his death natural, and
his heart just gave out or something.
Yeah, it's so fucking dumb.
And so as he dies, the will goes away, and all of the drone vampires start basically clutching their head and moaning, and Stroud is fighting everyone down below. And the Down syndrome kid throws himself at Stroud, and Stroud finally is just stop it, and bites out his throat.
Tears out his throat, and then Jack Black shows up as a vampire, and he's using the last shreds of his humanity to delay them. And then David, and then basically the Down syndrome kid, as Stroud is monologuing, manages to basically grab his pants leg and distract him, and Stroud
bows to like slap him away from his leg, and David cuts his head off because that's an easy thing to do. And then the Strouds will basically goes into Jack Black,
Right.
and as Jack Black turns fully into a vampire, David cuts him in half long way from the top of the head through the groin, cuts him in half. Right, this dude who's a doctor with this sword that he just sharpened, that's not even finished being made, right? Like
he's got fucking
clear
gaff tape wrapped around the handle.
Yeah, he manages to cut him in half the long way, like clean through, so that the two halves fall either side, and all of the drone vampires turn into dust, and in theory, all of the other like Eurotrash vampires die, but I don't think we ever actually see that happen, right? Like it's not like because they're
Stroud's body turns to dust.
I don't remember.
I don't know, but it's made clear that all the vampires are gone.
But Jack Black's body doesn't, because they bury it.
Right, they bury the halves of the head.
So basically,
it's inconsistent.
Yeah, it's inconsistent. So basically, the book ends with them reconvening a year later at the hotel, and David has returned to London, and apparently the vacancy for a doctor in Leppington is still available, but he's like, I'm going to work in London.
Right, because in a year they're not going to find another doctor.
And Bernice has taken another job also in London, and Electra is like, is anything happening there? They're like, no, we just want the fuck out of this town. And like Electra apparently decided at some point that she loved Jack Black.
Right, so as he's getting his throat torn out, she's like, I love you.
Yeah, and she occasionally like visits his grave and throws flowers melodramatically into the river that runs past his grave. And
so
then like
a year later, they're like, David's like, I better throw the sword into the lake.
Yeah, and
the river.
The book ends, like, to bring it full circle, the book ends with Electra basically sensing a presence that she thinks is Jack Black roaming the halls of her hotel, keeping her safe.
Whatever.
And she falls asleep feeling loved, that this sensation is roaming. Yeah. So
my thoughts on this book, and that's the book. It took us way too long to get through that book. It's like fucking convolution all over again. This is either a self-published book or a Vanity Press book, because the editing is atrocious.
It is not. It is not either. Apparently, there is its own label, because they are like at the end. There's like they're advertising for other titles.
Go read our other books, but then, it could be
a Vanity Press. Yeah, maybe.
Venture Press. I don't know about Venture Press, but so a lot of the thing that bothered me the most about it was anytime there was an I, like about half the time it was a T.
That wasn't on mine. I don't know if that was just something weird, but so the editing on this book was fucking shit. So I read the book Landscape, and half of the time the lines would end.
I read it Portrait, and that shit was there too.
Yeah, it would end halfway through the page and then restart, like, on the next line. So, like, half of a sentence would be on one line, and then but it wouldn't continue, and then it would continue at the start of, like, the next line down. Sometimes sentences would not have a space between the period ending one sentence and the start of the next sentence. A lot of times, like, some of the chapters, and I use that term loosely, like, it would just the chapter would be basically a page, but it wouldn't be actually a full page. It would be 2 pages, but one half of the page would be on one page, and the other half of what should have been one page is on the second page. And I think that was just like, it felt like padding for page count. But this book desperately needed an editor to look at, or someone needed to pay better attention to the formatting of it when it went to an EPUB, because it was just shit. I don't know if it would be better on a Nook, but it felt like somebody did whatever conversion from a Word document to the EPUB Kindle file type and did not proof it to make sure that the process of transferring file types didn't fuck up the formatting, because I've heard that it does, or that it can, and they didn't do that. It felt like they just kind of slapped it together. And this book really could have used better pacing.
Definitely.
And for me, like, it seemed just drastically inconsistent. Like, I don't remember, like, I think that they kind of half-assed explained why and how all of the vampires could be trapped underground, but still have the Eurotrash vampires, right? Like, so here's the thing. You have this giant metal door that is locked. It's been locked. It was locked when Elektra was a child, because she mentioned several times that her mother hated going into the basement because someone sometimes would be knocking on the other side of the door, and it freaked her out. And you have the culvert where the slut vampire is made. That's gated up, and the tunnel at Leppington's uncle's place is barred up, and he even mentions basically all of the other places were sealed as well, so that the vampires couldn't get out. But yet you have these Eurotrash vampires wandering around, occasionally taking people from the hotel, right? Taking Stroud, taking, and all of these other people, and no one ever says anything, right? Like, you remember Vampire Hotel?
Yeah.
So, like, if you remember in Vampire Hotel, the vampires attack, right? Like, and they start with taking the pets, all of the pets in the town, all of the dogs in the town, and the cats, and all of the pets go away, right? And nobody talks about the fact that, no kid is sad that their puppy was brutally murdered. Nobody's upset that their cats, all the cats vanished. No one talks about it, right? Same thing with this town. Like, it's a tiny ass fucking town, and apparently people just die or vanish all the fucking time, and no one talks about it. And then when the vampires are like making their final move in this book, right? They're taking people from the town, and nobody is commenting on the fact that people aren't showing up for work, that it's just it's asinine. It's just it feels like one of those things I've talked about in the past, where the author comes up with this scenario and they don't think about the next logical step beyond that, right? Like,
that's definitely how this felt. Like, they get to the end and like, oh shit, how are we gonna kill him? Kill the uncle.
Right, like the vampire, Jack Black's psychic abilities not being there. Like, he even says that he basically got the psychic abilities because when he was a child, his mother slammed his head into.
Well, he had them before that. Like, I don't think that was like the origin of his abilities, but he's like, I think that was just a way to make the character more interesting.
Yeah, he had this long scar along his forehead, and basically his backstory is that his mother blamed him for his own existence and abused him, and then he
basically his mom was fucking worthless.
His mom was a character from Everyone's an Asshole and Nobody is Happy, and
basically.
And but when he's on the bus, right? When he's on, or excuse me, on the train, right? And he's there and everything, he doesn't have the same psychic like projections.
I think he mentions hearing people's thoughts when he gets off the train.
But it's not like, in this. It's not in the same way though, right?
It's like, nowhere near as prevalent as it is later on. But you know, he talks about seeing all this black lightning all over town, and it's just it's shitty, and it's like the author didn't know how to move the story along, so he's like, let's just suddenly his power works differently,
and then like with like Stroud, right? He's this super fast, super strong vampire, yet he's distracted by a Down syndrome kid with his throat bitten out.
Well, they are super strong.
To the point where he gets totally distracted and like just bends over in front of David with his
chainsaw.
No, it wasn't the chainsaw. It was the +5 vampire legs sword of what the fuckness, right? Like, you know, they are just able to decapitate vampires coming at them with ease. Like David, who has never picked.
He's a doctor, so he knows where the vertebrae join and where to find. I don't fucking.
David has never ever used a sword before in his life, and yet he's able to just swing it and like it's a fucking Vorpal sword. It's going snicker snack, heads are flying off. It's
so this is the first book that I ever actually thought, you know what, I need to use a fucking Kindle note. You can highlight passages and make notes. So my note is WTF PVC. And I had to look at that and I'd be like, I got to find the passage for that again. The passage is, there's this line, she's talking about seeing, I think Elektra saw a vampire in a dream or something like that. And it says she couldn't tell whether it was male or female, only that its face was beautiful and its skin was as smooth as PVC.
I don't know.
Being Americans, of course, the first thing we're going to think about is that white plumbing piping. But PVC is not just that. It's like a lot of or if you're into that scene, fetish gear.
Yeah,
that's what she's talking about. But still, there had to have been a better thing you could use to describe how smooth its skin was.
Yeah. So they. But yeah, it's. I couldn't get past like there. And like the whole thing with them in the hotel, right? Like here you have these Eurotrash vampires who are wandering around the town, making other vampires at a whim, right? Like like Shroud at one point picks up like the slut vampire's sisters, turns them into vampires.
And it was one of the sisters that actually grabbed Elektra in the sewers.
Yes. And
and there's that weird,
and there's like a little kid
scene in there.
Yeah, just don't even go into it. Like,
yeah, it's weird.
And like one of the like makes like a little kid vampire, right? Like the light went in, and so they're making all these vampires, and they don't just storm the hotel,
right? Never.
And kill. They never storm the hotel.
They had a key to the hotel. The vampires had a key to the hotel because they come in and they're like, everybody gets a key to the side entrance because they need to come in after hours.
And so Stroud had
a key. And he'd been in the hotel. He was in the hotel, like legit. The
Stroud
thing outside her room
was Stroud. And he even like mentions, he's like, yeah, I like to watch people while they sleep, because it makes me funny to think that like I'm watching them and I could kill them in a heartbeat, but I don't, because I'm just like, that's how I get my rocks off. But they don't storm the hotel, right? There's no scene where they're valiantly fighting until dawn, right? Basically, Stroud stands out in the parking lot, eats a baby, and like basically tries to get them to turn on on each other in the stupidest way possible, right? He reveals that Electra has hepatitis A, that Bernice is like, her first sexual experience was basically getting gangbanged and she liked it and she feels ashamed. And then he's like, and Jack Black's a bastard. And basically David's response is like,
so
you have seen the guy, right? You have seen the fact that he's heavily tattooed, and basically if you looked up the definition of street thug, English street thug / hooligan in the dictionary, Jack Black's image would be there. And it's just stupid, right? Like, these vampires are out there, and he's like, you need to come, why do you have these loyalty with these friends when they could just go up and murder his friends and go, well, now you have no connection to these people anymore. Just come lead us to wherever.
Yeah.
Right. There's that.
No one acted in the
a logical sense
way.
Yeah.
Like, there's no.
My question is, if all of the vampires are locked up, right? Like, so all the vampires are locked up, and the ones down below, right, are mindless. Who was the first Eurotrash? And like, at one point, like,
who is the vampire that created Mike Stroud?
Yeah, the uncle is like, well, they basically use their abilities to basically draw people to like the grates, or or like to the culvert or something like that, and they take people that way. But we have it established that all of the original vampires are the mindless drones. So was the uncle basically somehow psychically projecting that to those people that were randomly taken? Who was the vampire that took Stroud, who was wandering the halls of the hotel?
Stroud never even tells you. Like, you'd think he would be like, oh yeah, this is how that happened, but no. And the thing that really kills me is that first chapter with Bernice and watching the video and the thing outside her door. That set it up so incredibly well. I was like, this could actually be a good book. And then the rest of the book happened.
Because it was fairly creepy, right? Like, it was
super creepy. I read that first chapter when I was working nights, so it's 1:30 in the morning, and I'm in a dark break room reading that, and I'm like, maybe I'm not going to read this here. And then the rest of the book was just this horrible shit show, and it was like the most boring vampire book I've ever read.
Yeah, and so there were just so many things that with these giant glaring plot holes, or like, why didn't they do this, or why didn't they do that? The apparently surgical precision of using a chainsaw to behead vampires, right? Like, in almost total darkness, right? Like, yes, they have a super bright flashlight, but I'm sorry, super bright flashlights generally have a pretty focused beam, right? Like, so yes, you will get some ambient light, but the effect of having such a super bright flashlight is that your night vision essentially is fucked.
Right. Everything not in that beam of light
is going to be unseen.
They describe her as being a flashlight with a pistol grip, and that it's like this million candle power light. So what they're talking about is like a Q beam, like those big lights that cops use when they pull you over and they put that bright ass light on your car.
Yeah, like
so
a
that's
spotlight.
what it is.
Yeah.
So anything not in the beam of that light, and it could be fairly wide, is going to be completely impossible to see because your eyes are adjusted to looking at the things in that bright light. So when the vampire smashed that light, they were all fucked.
But they're not, because
they're
somehow, like, they're in total darkness. They, like, Jack Black's, like, able to flail blindly and take vampire heads off all over the place, right? And that's the, and that's the thing, is that just so much of this book, when you think of it, when you basically scrape away the veneer of the the words on the page, and you actually try and put some thought into it, it just falls right the fuck apart. And I couldn't ever get past that, because I would think about what was happening, and I could never suspend my disbelief to get into the book that, okay, vampires are there. It's the same thing with, like, Vampire Hotel, but not, like, I will say this book, it was at least better written than it. Like, but it's
at least
still
this book, you could see the way the plot progressed linearly. Vampire Hotel, that was just
right. Like, God. You have the kid fencing with a katana, right? Like, just God. But, like,
let's not get back on that.
But, like, you have all of these bits that are possibly further supernatural, right? Like the sword that basically became super sharp and drank Lippington's blood, and you had a whole, like, Lady in the Lake, like, Galahad throwing Excalibur into the river scene at the end, right, with the
Right.
sword falling into the water. Because why have that, right? Like, what possible purpose do you have with that, except, like, maybe you're biting on the end of it, where people have to come together to have their last, is it over, and their before their final parting of ways. I just
so next month we're going to read a different book. Or actually, this month.
Talk about it.
Well, okay, so we had another book set up for this month, and we were like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then we looked at the page count on the book that we want to read and record in a week. And that was, we were going to read Atlas Shrugged.
And then we realized how fucking long Atlas Shrugged was, because I had never read it.
1,200 pages.
And then we took a look at the rest of February and went, fuck, no way.
So Atlas Shrugged is like 3 to 4 of our normal books. So what we're going to do with that one is we're going to read it in the background. We're going to read it over a few months, and then as soon as it's done, then we'll record. In the meantime, I have I've gone back to the site where I found us, Antigua, and In the Breath of a Moment. And I think we've gotten one other book off this list, and it's the site I found. It's a list somebody has compiled of, like, the 10 lowest rated books on Amazon, and most of them are nonfiction. But we're gonna tap that list for all the fiction we can. This month we're going to be reading a book called by Rich Shapiro called Wild Animus, a novel. Like, when you have to subtitle your book that it's a novel, that's going to be some choice stuff. But basically, it's a story about a guy who graduates from college in the 60s and then goes to Alaska and becomes a ram. That's all
little, I know. Like, big-horned.
Like he turns himself into a ram. Along with the driving need to uncover his innermost self, Sam gradually transforms himself into a ram.
Is this like Metamorphosis, but more stupid?
Yes, it is. It's got 155 ratings. It's got 2 stars. 63% of the ratings are 1-star ratings. This is going to be a great book.
Oh,
and it's fairly short. It was either that or Kanye West Reanimator, but that one's only 80 pages long.
See, we could have totally had Kanye. Well, let's save Kanye West Reanimator for when we're like, we don't have a book and we're running short of time. Let's read this 80-page atrocity, because there's no way that won't be bad.
Well, I guess, like, it's fairly highly rated. It's just the title sounds ridiculous to me, and I think if we give it any kind of publicity, it'll be great, and it'll piss off Kanye, who is. If you read his Twitter account, that dude is losing his mind. And if I can help contribute to that shit show, I happily will. But I'm kind of thinking, like, I want to get back to reading just some really awful,
weird fucking bullshit
weird shit.
Okay.
But we've got to find the proper stuff, because if it's too obviously intended to be weird.
Well, yeah, we're not going to read any Carlton Belichick III bullshit again.
And we're also not going to read, like, oh God, what was it? Fuck, I can't remember the name of the book now. It's late. I've been drinking. So that's our book for next month. Wild Animus, a novel by Rich Shapiro. This month we read Vampyrrhic by Simon Clark. Simon Clark, just stop writing. I looked up Venture Press, by the way. Venture Press is not a vanity press. They are just an indie sci-fi fantasy publisher of, looks like specifically ebooks. But Simon Clark has written 5 friggin' books that have been published. So
all of them with Venture Press?
I don't know if they're all with Venture Press, but that's 5 more books than I've published. So I will say, Simon Clark, your books are not good, but whatever, keep it up.
Well, this one wasn't. Right.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe the other ones are all
like,
this was like his first one, and all the other ones are fucking amazing. Let's see. There's Cold Legion.
Maybe there's something going on that we don't know, like it's a ghost situation, like John Ringo.
Let's see. There's Cold Legion. The monster isn't sleeping anymore, and this is the end of the world. We are waking, and the crusade has only just begun. Let's see. Simon Clark is. Let's see.
Oh, that one's not listed on the Venture Press page, so like maybe he's got more than 5.
That was sold by Amazon Digital Services LLC, and that was from Endeavor Press. Published just last month, or just 2 months ago in December of 2015. Let's see.
Yeah, dude's got quite a few books. One thing we actually didn't talk about, there were like 3 sex scenes in this book. None of them were necessary.
So there was. What are you counting as sex scenes? Because I don't know if there was actually sex. There was horrible paroxysms that could have been sex, but yeah.
No, well, there were. I guess you're right. There was the one with the woman and I guess her boss. But then they got attacked.
Oh yeah, the couple having.
There was the weird non-sex, almost sex scene between Elektra and the vampire chick in the sewers. So
one thing about Elektra is she's potentially bi. Like, it's rumored around town that she's bi. But she doesn't have sex with anybody because she doesn't want to pass on the hepatitis.
I guess. And they're in the sewer, and this vampire leads her away, and the vampire is like, "Don't you think I'm more attractive than my sister?" And starts taking off her clothes. Like, they didn't make it clear that she was trying to like lure her in to bite her or anything like that. The vampire just was like, "Give me attention. I'm going to take off my clothing for you." BT dubs, it was fucking pitch black in there.
Yeah, there was no more flashlight. How were they even seeing that?
All right. I'm done talking about this book. And it's getting kind of late.
Yeah. All right. So that was Season 5, Episode 1, Vampyrrhic by Simon Clark. His bullshit. Next month, or in a week or two, we will read a book about a ram, or a guy who turned himself into a ram because
the best description I've heard of the book is this is a novel about the 60s by somebody who was nowhere near them when they happened. Because I guess he makes a big deal of trying to make it set in the 60s, and it's awful. I cannot wait to read this book.
I bet it's like an old person trying to write how a young person talks, right? Like,
but in reverse.
But in reverse. So it's a young person talking about a historical setting that they have no connection to, and apparently have done zero actual research into to be able to talk about it.
I cannot wait. All right.
All right.
Thank you, listeners, for sticking with us.
Yep, season 5 years. That's awesome.
Jesus Christ. 5 years of this.
Yeah, all right.
Getting too old for this shit.
Yeah. All right. Ram book next month.
Ram book next month. This is Tyler.
And this is Matt.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.